everybody, welcome back to my channel for another edit with me. Let's go ahead and hop on in. So this is part of the series where I'm walking you through my film journey session by session, so hopefully you can get some good takeaways and learn from my wins and my mistakes. And this session here is, I think it's really pretty, but it was more of a fail than anything else. So this session is of two friends of mine, two dear friends, and they are returning clients, and this was a free session. I invited them out to celebrate the upcoming arrival of their little baby boy, and I was also wanting to test out 2 rolls of FujiPro 400H on medium format. At this point, I had already shot medium format Fuji, but I had gotten a new lens, and it was an autofocus lens, and I felt a little bit more comfortable, so I took advantage of the situation and said, yeah, come on down, I'll take some images of you for like a maternity style shoot. But as a preface to this session, these pictures may look fair, like they may look okay here, but I shot 2 rolls of FujiPro 400H medium format, and out of like the 36 or 30 something images that I got out of 32 images that I got out of that session, literally only like 7 of them were usable. The rest were completely blurred out, were completely awful, and that was simply because I learned a valuable lesson that day, and that is that I cannot, with my Pentax 645N, I cannot shoot handheld lower than 1/25th of a second. Some of these images were shot at 1/60th of a second, which is the cutoff for me. I learned that day that I cannot shoot Fuji at 1/60th of a second. And then my second sort of little mistake that I made was that I kind of misjudged the timing of their session. I had them come a little bit later than I normally would have had, and I just kind of messed up on the timing, which was my fault for sure, which is why I ended up having to, crank my shutter speed up, or down, should I say, my shutter speed down so low at 1/60th of a second. So my 2 mistakes were that I didn't get the timing right for the session, and then the second was that because I didn't get the timing right for the session, I started shooting at 1/60th of a second, which is a no-go for a Pentax. Maybe on a tripod, or maybe if I were if I focused really hard and was super still, but I think that even the opening and closing of the shutter would have resulted in some shake, and it was a no-go. So tips for Fuji by looking at this session: shoot in plenty of light, because I rated this at 200 and exposed for the shadows. It was just a recipe for disaster. So lessons from Fuji: if you're going to rate it at 200, make sure you have more than enough light. And if your shutter speed gets low, like 1/25th or something like that, 1/60th, then that's a no-go. I would probably switch to 35mm, where I have the opportunity to open up my aperture way higher, and it'll allow me to crank my shutter speed up a little bit quicker. So plenty of light, fast shutter speeds for Fuji, at least if you rated it 200. So let's go ahead and start editing these. This will be a quick edit because I remember exactly how I edited these. Oh, so pretty. Even if you look closely, some of these, it's not super in focus. And I have to remind myself to talk to you about the light too, like the angle of the sun as well. So I'm gonna, nope, I don't like that at all. That's why you should do all of your own edits and not what Lightroom says. Okay, let's go ahead and apply my basic preset here. I'm going to pop up my shadows, bring up my blacks a little because it's still a little dark. And see, this already just looks so pretty. Like if I were to leave it like this, I would be completely happy, but I have a little bit of color toning that I need to fix. So it's looking, I'm going to warm it up just by a couple of clicks here. And then my tint, and sorry, I'm pausing because my mouse is over here on the tint slider, and I'm looking as I'm sliding, because sometimes I do it by tick marks, and sometimes I do it using the keyboard, and sometimes I do it using the mouse. So I'm going to go down to just 6, maybe make it 5. Okay, And lastly, I'm going to bring in a little bit more light than what was initially there. So I'm going to bring down my highlights a little and bring up my lights in the tone curve. But that needs to be very, 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 very minimal. I'm not going to do a lot with that. Okay, and there's before and after. I told you this would be very, very quick, and this is pretty easy. Cool beans. Okay, let's move on. Oh, so cute. I'm going to apply my basic preset, and I'm going to bring up my shadows, bring up my blacks a little, and then my contrast is still going to come back up. I'm going to see what my auto looks like here. Nope, that's why you shouldn't let Lightroom do it for you. So this is looking just a little bit, oddly enough, like a little bit green and a little bit warm for my taste. So I'm going to, especially if I'm shooting Fuji, so I'm just going to take up my tint by like one little click and then bring down, cool it off just a little. So I brought up my tint just a little to the magenta side because I was getting a little bit of green cast on their faces, and then temperature wise it was just turning out a little too warm, so I wanted to cool it off just a little, just my personal preference. I'm going to correct I'm going to straighten that out a little bit. That looks good, much better. And maybe I need to crop this a little because should be like the main, he's an accessory and she's like the main event here in the image. So let's see what that looks like. Maybe out just a little more. Maybe back just a tad bit. Yeah, I want the line going straight through him. That looks a lot better. Okay, very good. I think that's good. That looks good to me. So before and after. Okay, let's go ahead and hop on over to this image here. This is also another easy one. Add my basic preset, and honestly guys, this looks okay to me, and the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to up my contrast a little and then bring down my black some just to darken his glasses and just to add a little bit more depth in like his beard and in a little bit of his hair here. So I think that's all I'm going to do to that. That looks okay to me. So before and after. I like that a lot. That looks good. And next, oh, so pretty. And apply the basic preset. And I'm going to actually take up my exposure by one little click here. My shadows are going to come up because I'm feeling like it's a little bit dark here. My contrast is going to come up again because if I lighten up too many shadows and too many dark spots, then the lightness of her face and her skin are going to kind of wash out a little bit. They're just going to fall into the background and they're not going to stand out. So I need some warmth here for sure. I added 5 clicks of warmth and then maybe a little bit of magenta, just a tad bit. Okay. And then lastly, bring down my highlights a little in the tone curve and then up my lights by like 2 clicks. Okay, yep, that looks okay to me. So before and after. Now something that I'm noticing here that I just want to kind of point out a little bit is that you've seen me edit with Portra a lot, and Portra has a lot of built-in contrast. It's just naturally a contrasty film. You're going to get plenty of built-in contrast and you don't have to really do much in the way of your highlights, your shadows, and unless you just want to make things kind of pop a little more. So, but with Fuji is incredibly neutral. It's very, some will even argue that it's a little flat at times, depending on how you shoot it. And that's what I'm seeing here a little bit, but I actually want to kind of stay true to the Fuji look. I don't want to make this look like Portra, which is like a, a thing that I went through for a while whenever I was trying to decide what film I wanted to shoot, is that I was shooting Fuji because that was what was popular in the industry, and I thought the pictures were beautiful, but I ended up editing them warmer and more contrasty, and I realized that that's what I can get from portrait just by shooting portrait naturally, and I really wasn't a big fan of how cool the palette was, and it wasn't working for me. But what I see here is that she's so neutral. See how neutral she is? There's not a lot of pop going on in like in her face and in her hair. It's just very, very neutral, which is beautiful, but not exactly what I like in an image. So, but for this particular image here, I'm just going to keep all of my elements and dynamics as is, just to stay true to Fuji. So I'm going to crop this in just a little, and that looks good. Okay, before and after. Okay, very good. Let's look at these up close and see what we got. Nope, I want to have all four of them side by side. There we go. Okay, so something I wanted to point out to you really quickly was the progression of light kind of slipping away and how it affects color tone. So a lesson in Kelvin and white balance is that whenever you lose sunlight, things automatically cool off. And that should have been kind of my number one indicator when I was shooting, is to be able to look around me and see that it was getting a little too dark and not try to shoot at 1/60th, because I had never shot at 1/60th before, or 1/160th of a second before, and I just really wasn't sure if it would work or if it was something that I'll be able to do, and I just kind of ended up just trying it out just to see, and I wish I wouldn't have, because I wasted so much film, and I probably could have learned from somewhere else. So hopefully this video will save you a roll or two of FujiPro rated at 200 in the late afternoon. So yeah, leave a comment below if you've had any like funny experiences with different films and rating films. This has been like one of my number one, like, I don't know, fails as a film photographer so far. Just a session that did not turn out very good at all. So but look at the progression of light. So this image here, image number 2, was one of the earliest images taken, and it is obviously more light filled, and the light is saturating the frame a lot more. And you can tell because the greens in the grass look a little bit more yellow. And yes, I upped up the warmth just a little bit, but you can definitely see that the greens are just a tad bit more yellow here, as opposed to image number 4, which this is one of the later images that I took. And you can even see the sun is kind of hazy over here, like in the background. And then if you look over here, you can see the sun is pretty much gone, like it's beneath the horizon, and we're left with just a little bit of light left in the sky. So that's something really important too that I should have been noticing, is just as the sun went down, I should probably make it a rule that I wouldn't shoot Fuji after the sun reaches the horizon. So I probably won't do that anymore. So after it dips beneath the horizon, I probably won't shoot any more Fuji. But yeah, I think that that's pretty much everything. Actually, I need to straighten this. I didn't straighten this because the computer did a bad job before. Okay, there we go. Cool beans. So let's go through one by one, before and after. Before and after. Before and after. And here's the raw, where you can see that the greens are a little bit more yellow here. Before and after. And before and after. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm looking at this, I want to bring the warmth up just a little more. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and now look at it side by side with the others and see if it's if I have a good continuity and consistency. Yeah, that looks more consistent with all the others. So, okay, and that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this particular video. If you are a film shooter, or if you're a hybrid shooter, I would love for you to check out my private Facebook group that is just for hybrid shooters or film shooters, whether you're an experienced film photographer or even a beginning film photographer. There's a lot of potential for a lot of education over in that group. So if you want some more special private instruction from me, you'll be able to talk to me a little bit more personally. Go join that Facebook group. That is a really, really good place and a good resource to get more direct answers for your film photography questions. So go join that, and I am really grateful that you joined me today, and I hope to see you soon.